I just want to offer some quick reflections, and then let's move into discussions. Because one thing that I think Bettina helps us to think about is the importance of curriculum. And you know, one of the things that I was talking yesterday about in my talk is that education often functions as a way to assimilate our populations. It teaches us to see ourselves as fitting into the status quo. And one of the things we need to imagine is what education can look like if it's education not for assimilation, not for sorting, but education for democracy. And what needs to happen? What does curriculum need to look like for that kind of education to happen? Sumi helps me thinking about the power of framing. And you know, both of her presentations is such a wonderful history lesson, right? And one of the things that I think about is, let's remind ourselves about the history of some of these battles that we have, like the reauthorization of ESEA. I actually haven't been following where NEA stands on this, but we should be asking very critical questions about the current bill that is very likely and we all expect to pass. And why do we need to ask critical questions? ESEA arose in the midst of the civil rights movement. And one of the things that ESEA did and insisted on doing was using federal funds to leverage the authority of the federal government to push states to comply with civil rights law. Right? It was about changing how states operate. You all are probably aware that at the heart of the Alexander Murray Bill is actually the devolving of authority from the federal government to the states. It's a fundamental shift in what I would argue is at the core of ESEA, or at least was. These are some of the history helps us to think about framing, right? We get caught up in the good things about the bill that we sometimes lose sight about what might actually gut our ability to transform public education. Or even Common Core. Again, I don't know where everyone in this room stands on Common Core, but let me remind you that 3 decades ago, it was the conservative movement that was calling for a national curriculum. And it was a response to the civil rights movement calling for a multicultural one, right? Common Core has pluses, but let's not ignore the history that helps us to see the minuses, right? And then finally, assessment. So much debate on whether to do more testing, less testing. That's not the right debate. The right debate isn't how to do less testing. The right debate is, what does testing actually accomplish? And again, history. What does history tell us about standardized norm reference testing? Is that it is interconnected with the eugenics movement. It was not a way to describe. It was a way to use science to justify the sorting of people by race. Right? There are histories to this that get lost in the current debates, and all the more reason why the framing is so important.